By sunrise, the vampire kingdom would be at war, and every vampire would blame the same human girl. 3 days earlier, Emily Carter had no idea her life was about to become the center of a kingdom she didn't even believe existed. At 24, Emily was used to surviving on too little sleep and even less money. She worked the night shift at a private restaurant in downtown Chicago, where a single dinner could cost more than her weekly paycheck. Her apartment was a 15-minute bus ride away. Her rent was due in 4 days, and there was exactly $47 in her checking account. Still, she smiled when customers complained. She carried heavy trays without asking for help, and whenever the kitchen had leftovers, she quietly packed them into small containers for the elderly janitor who worked after midnight. That was Emily. She had learned a long time ago that being poor did not mean she had to become cold. That night, the restaurant was hosting a private gathering unlike anything Emily had ever seen. The guests arrived in black cars. Their clothes were elegant. Their voices were quiet. Their skin seemed unusually pale beneath the golden lights. Nobody touched the food. Nobody laughed too loudly. And whenever a certain man entered the room, every conversation seemed to disappear. Emily noticed him from across the ballroom. He stood near the tall windows, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his dark hair falling neatly across his forehead. His skin was almost porcelain pale, noticeably lighter than hers, and his expression was so calm that it felt unnatural. He looked young, perhaps 30, but there was something ancient in his eyes. Gray, almost silver. Emily had seen rich men before. She had seen arrogant men, impatient men, powerful men. This was different. People were afraid of him. A waiter nearly dropped a glass when the man glanced his way. A woman at the nearest table lowered her voice and whispered, "That's Adrian Blackwood." Emily froze for half a second. She had heard the name. Adrian Blackwood owned one of the largest private companies in the country. Rumors followed him everywhere. Ruthless, untouchable, mysterious. But Emily had never heard the strangest rumor of all. She didn't know Adrian was the Vampire King. She only saw a man standing alone beside a window while cold rain covered the glass. When Emily passed his table, she noticed something no one else seemed to notice. His hand was trembling slightly. She stopped. "Sir." Adrian slowly looked at her. His silver eyes met hers, and for one strange second, the entire room seemed to disappear. "Are you all right?" Emily asked. Adrian stared at her as if the question itself were impossible. No one asked him that. Not in 100 years. Not since the world had learned to fear his name. Emily glanced toward the rain. "You look cold." Before he could answer, she removed her worn black cardigan and held it out. It was old, soft, and slightly faded from years of washing. "You can use this." Adrian looked at the cardigan, then back at her. Something shifted behind his eyes. Not anger, not suspicion, something far more dangerous. Something he had spent centuries believing was dead. His heart. Adrian did not take the cardigan immediately. He simply stared at it, as though Emily had offered him something far more valuable than a worn piece of clothing. "You should keep it," he said quietly. His voice was deep, controlled, and strangely tired. Emily gave a small smile. "I have another one at home." It was not entirely true. She had an old sweatshirt, but it was nothing like a cardigan. Still, she could not bring herself to take the offer back. Adrian finally accepted it. His fingers brushed the fabric, and something unfamiliar passed across his expression. "Thank you, Emily." She blinked. "How do you know my name?" For the first time that evening, Adrian seemed caught off guard. His gaze moved toward the small name tag pinned to her uniform. "Your name tag," he said. Emily looked down and laughed softly. "Right. I forgot I was wearing it." Adrian almost smiled. Almost. Then someone approached the table. A tall man with silver hair and an expensive black suit stopped a few feet away. His eyes moved from Adrian to Emily, and his expression tightened. "Your Majesty," he said. Emily looked at Adrian. "Your Majesty?" The word seemed strangely formal for a businessman. Adrian gave the man one cold glance. "Not here." The man immediately lowered his head. "Of course." Emily stood there, confused. "I am sorry. Did I interrupt something?" "No," Adrian said. "You should return to work." His tone was gentle now. Emily nodded and walked away, but she could feel his eyes following her. Across the ballroom, the silver-haired man leaned toward another guest. She touched him. "I saw." And he allowed it. Their voices were low, but Emily could not hear them. She returned to the kitchen, convinced she had simply done something kind for a tired customer. She had no idea that an entire hidden kingdom had just noticed her. 20 minutes later, Emily stepped outside through the service entrance to take out a bag of trash. The rain had become heavier. She pulled her arms close to herself and hurried beneath the awning. Then she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Adrian stood several yards away, wearing her cardigan over his black suit. Somehow, the simple garment looked almost ceremonial on him. "You left this behind," Emily said, pointing toward the doorway. "I came to return something else." He held out a small silver umbrella. Emily stared at it. "For me? For you? Why?" Adrian looked toward the rain. "Because you were kind to me." Emily smiled. "You look like someone who does not get much kindness." His expression changed. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he asked, "Would you believe me if I told you that I have not heard anyone say that to me in a very long time?" Emily shook her head. "Probably not." A quiet laugh escaped him. It was the first real warmth she had seen in his face. Then the restaurant doors opened behind them. A manager stepped outside, looking nervous. "Mr. Blackwood, the council is waiting." Adrian's expression immediately became cold again. Emily noticed the change. "Council?" she asked. "Business," he replied. But before he walked away, he looked back at her. "Emily, do not leave through the front entrance tonight." She frowned. "Why?" Adrian hesitated. "Because some people inside are watching you." Then he disappeared into the rain, leaving Emily beneath the awning with the silver umbrella in her hands. For the first time that night, she wondered who Adrian Blackwood really was, and why powerful people seemed more frightened of him than they were of the storm. The next morning, Emily Carter woke to the sound of rain tapping against her apartment window and the strange feeling that someone was watching her. She sat up slowly, remembering the night before. Adrian Blackwood. The silver umbrella. The warning. Some people inside are watching you. She had barely slept. At 7:45 in the morning, her phone rang. It was her manager from the restaurant. "Emily, I need you to come in early." His voice sounded nervous. "Why?" "Just come in, please." By 8:30, Emily was back at the restaurant. The ballroom from the night before had been cleaned completely, but something felt different. Employees whispered near the kitchen. Several unfamiliar men in dark suits stood near the entrance. None of them looked like ordinary security guards. Emily noticed something else. They were all watching her. She lowered her eyes and walked toward the kitchen. "Emily." Her manager hurried toward her. "You need to stay in the staff area today." "Did I do something wrong?" "No," he paused. "You just need to be careful." Before Emily could ask another question, the restaurant doors opened. Adrian walked inside. The room changed instantly. Conversation stopped. Every employee stood straighter. Adrian was no longer wearing her cardigan. He wore the same dark suit from the previous night, perfectly composed, his pale face calm beneath the soft morning light. But Emily noticed his eyes immediately. They were searching for her. When he found her, he walked directly across the room. "Emily, good morning." She held up the silver umbrella. "I brought this back." Adrian looked at it, then at her. "Keep it. I cannot keep something this expensive. It belongs to you now." Emily frowned. "You are very strange, Mr. Blackwood." Something almost like amusement appeared in his eyes. "I have been called worse." A quiet voice interrupted them. "Your Majesty." Emily turned. The silver-haired man from the night before stood several feet away. This time, there were 3 others with him. All of them looked serious. Adrian's expression hardened. "I told you not to come here. The council has waited long enough." Emily looked between them. "Council?" The silver-haired man glanced at her. "She should not be here." Adrian stepped slightly closer to Emily, his voice calm but firm. "She stays." Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "Adrian, what is happening?" He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something she never expected. "I need you to trust me." "That is difficult when everyone around you keeps calling you your Majesty." Silence filled the room. The silver-haired man looked away. Adrian closed his eyes briefly, as though making a decision that could not be undone. Then he opened them and faced Emily. "My name is Adrian Blackwood. I am not simply the owner of this restaurant." Emily waited. "I am the king of the vampire kingdom." For several seconds, Emily said nothing. Then she laughed softly, certain he was joking. Adrian did not smile. The room remained completely silent. Emily's laughter faded. She looked at the pale man standing before her and suddenly remembered the strange guests, the untouched food, the unnatural silence whenever he entered a room, and the fear in every person's eyes. "Vampires?" she whispered. Adrian nodded. "And you have been noticed by people who have watched my family for centuries." Emily's heart began to race. "Why me?" Adrian looked toward her wrist. A faint silver pattern had appeared beneath her skin sometime during the night. He stared at it in disbelief. "Because," he whispered, "something ancient has chosen you." Emily stared at the faint silver pattern on her wrist. It looked like a delicate crescent surrounded by tiny lines, almost like an ancient symbol drawn beneath her skin. "Chosen by what?" she asked. Adrian did not answer immediately. He glanced toward the silver-haired man, who had gone unusually quiet. "Everyone out," Adrian said. The 3 council members exchanged uneasy looks. "Your Majesty, this concerns the entire kingdom." "I said everyone out." One by one, they left the restaurant. The doors closed. The room became silent. Emily looked at Adrian. "Start explaining." For the first time since she had met him, Adrian seemed uncertain about what to say. He walked toward the window and looked at the rain-covered street below. "There is an ancient mark known as the heart mark. It has appeared only a handful of times in our history." Emily looked down at her wrist. "And what does it mean?" "It means the person carrying it can form a bond with the ruler of the vampire kingdom." Emily stared at him. "A bond?" Adrian nodded. "Not ownership. Not control. Something deeper. A connection that neither person can simply command away." Emily folded her arms. "That sounds complicated." "It is." "And dangerous?" Adrian looked at her. "Very." Emily took a slow breath. "Why did you not tell me last night?" "Because I did not know." His voice softened. "The mark appeared after you touched me." Emily remembered the moment clearly. The restaurant. The rain. The cardigan. His hand touching the fabric. She looked at him carefully. "What happens now?" Adrian's eyes met hers. "The council will want answers. Some will believe you are a threat. Others will believe you are the key to changing the balance of power." Emily gave a nervous laugh. "I am a waitress with $47 in her checking account. I do not exactly feel like a threat." Adrian's expression softened. "That is precisely why they will underestimate you." Before Emily could respond, the lights above them flickered. A low bell sounded somewhere beyond the restaurant walls. Adrian immediately turned toward the hallway. "What was that?" Emily asked. "The council has called an emergency assembly." "For me?" "For us." Emily's stomach tightened. "I do not even know your world." Adrian walked toward her, stopping several feet away. "Then you should see it before you decide whether you want any part of it." He extended his hand. Emily hesitated. "Where are we going?" "My home." "The vampire kingdom?" "Yes." Emily looked at his hand, then at the rain outside. Every sensible part of her mind told her to walk away. Yet another part remembered how he had looked when she gave him her cardigan. Lonely. Almost human. She placed her hand in his. The silver mark on her wrist suddenly glowed softly. Adrian's expression changed. He looked at the symbol, then at Emily. "That has never happened before." "What does it mean?" Before he could answer, the restaurant doors opened. The silver-haired council member stood there, his face pale with concern. "Your Majesty," he said quietly. "The entire council has seen the mark." Adrian's hand tightened gently around Emily's, not controlling her, simply reassuring her. "Then they know," he said. "Know what?" Emily asked. The council member looked directly at her. "That the prophecy has returned." Emily felt the room grow colder. Adrian turned toward the waiting car outside. "Come with me, Emily." She followed him into the rain, unaware that beyond the city limits stood a hidden castle, an ancient kingdom, and a council already preparing to decide what her arrival would mean for them all. The castle appeared beyond the mountains just after sunset. Emily had expected something dark and frightening, but the sight before her was strangely beautiful. Silver towers rose above the forest, their windows glowing warmly against the evening sky. A narrow road curved through ancient trees before ending at enormous iron gates. The car stopped. Adrian stepped out first and waited for Emily. "Welcome to Blackwood Castle," he said. Emily stared upward. "You live here?" "I have for a very long time." She stepped onto the stone path, holding the silver umbrella he had given her. Everything felt unreal. The quiet gardens, the enormous stone walls, the servants who lowered their heads when Adrian passed. Then Emily noticed something else. Every person in the castle looked at her. Some were curious. Some were nervous. A few immediately looked away. Adrian noticed her discomfort. They have heard about the mark. Already. News travels quickly here. Emily gave him a skeptical look. Apparently, they entered a vast hall lined with portraits. Emily stopped beneath one of them. It showed a younger-looking Adrian standing beside several members of his family. The painting seemed centuries old, yet the face was unmistakably his. "That is you," Emily whispered. Adrian nodded. "One of the earlier portraits. How old are you?" He paused. "Old enough that you would not believe me." Emily smiled despite herself. "Try me." 347. Her smile disappeared. "You are serious." Completely. Before Emily could respond, a deep bell echoed through the castle. Adrian's expression changed. "The council is ready." He led her through a long corridor toward enormous wooden doors. As they opened, Emily entered a circular chamber filled with dozens of elegantly dressed vampires. At the far end stood the silver-haired council member from the restaurant. "Emily Carter," he announced. "Human." The words sounded almost like a judgment. Emily kept her shoulders straight. She was nervous, but she refused to let them see her afraid. Adrian stood beside her. "She is under my protection." A woman seated near the center of the chamber spoke. She had silver hair and an expression that revealed nothing. "That is exactly what concerns us." Emily looked at her. "Why?" The woman studied the mark on Emily's wrist. "Because the last human who carried that symbol changed the course of our kingdom." Emily glanced at Adrian. "What happened?" Silence settled over the chamber. Adrian answered instead. "The previous heart mark appeared 200 years ago." "And the person?" Emily asked. Adrian's voice became quieter. "She disappeared." Emily felt a chill. "What does that mean?" The silver-haired woman leaned forward. "It means the prophecy has never ended peacefully." Adrian's gaze hardened, but Emily raised a hand slightly. "Wait, you said the mark chooses a person. Does that mean I had no choice?" The council exchanged looks. Then the woman said, "That is the question we need answered." Suddenly, the silver mark on Emily's wrist began to glow again. Every conversation stopped. Adrian looked at it, then at Emily. The symbol spread into a delicate pattern of light across her skin before settling into a single bright crescent. Somewhere deep beneath the castle, another bell began to ring. The council members stood one by one. Emily looked at Adrian. "What is happening?" His expression was unlike anything she had seen before. "The castle has recognized you." The silver-haired woman whispered. "The ancient bond has awakened." Emily swallowed. She had entered the castle expecting answers. Instead, she had just become the one mystery no one in the kingdom was prepared to solve. The council chamber remained silent as Emily stared at the glowing mark on her wrist. The light slowly faded, leaving only the delicate silver crescent beneath her skin. No one moved. No one spoke. Then Adrian stepped forward. "The meeting is over." The silver-haired woman immediately shook her head. "Your Majesty, you cannot simply dismiss the council." Adrian looked at her. "I can." His voice was calm, but every word carried authority. "And I am." Emily watched the council members exchange uneasy glances. She had never seen a room become quiet so quickly. Adrian turned toward her. "Come with me." They left the chamber and entered a long corridor lit by hundreds of candles. Emily waited until the doors closed behind them. "You knew this could happen." Adrian stopped. "I suspected." "That is not the same thing." He looked at her. "No, it is not." Emily folded her arms. "Then tell me everything." Adrian walked toward a tall window overlooking the castle gardens. "The heart mark is older than my family, older than this castle. It appears when a human and a vampire king share a connection strong enough to affect the ancient laws of our kingdom." Emily looked down at her wrist. "And what happens to the human?" "Usually nothing." "Usually?" Adrian was silent for a moment. The last person who carried the mark became the center of a political struggle. Different houses wanted to control her influence. She refused them all. Emily waited. What happened next? She vanished. Emily's expression softened. "You do not know where she went." "No." Adrian looked toward the dark mountains beyond the glass. "That uncertainty has haunted the kingdom for 2 centuries." Emily slowly approached the window. "And now they think I am going to do the same thing. They are afraid of what you might become. I am afraid too." Adrian turned toward her. "You should be." Emily looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "That is not very comforting. I am not going to lie to you just to make you feel better." His expression softened. "But I will not let anyone decide your future for you." Emily studied him carefully. Why do you care so much? Adrian looked away. For several seconds, the only sound was rain against the windows. Because last night, you gave me your cardigan without knowing who I was. Emily smiled faintly. That is your reason? It was the first reason. He paused. Then you looked at me without fear. Emily's smile faded. You looked lonely. Adrian's eyes softened. I was. A quiet moment passed between them. Then a distant bell rang once. Adrian's expression changed. Emily noticed immediately. What now? The council has begun contacting the noble houses. Why? Because they believe the mark gives them a reason to challenge my authority. Emily felt her stomach tighten. But I have done nothing. That will not matter to everyone. Adrian walked toward a massive wooden door at the end of the corridor. He opened it, revealing a private library filled with ancient books and family records. There is something I need you to see. Emily followed him inside. On a table lay an old leather-bound book. Its pages were filled with faded symbols. Adrian opened it carefully and stopped at a drawing of the same silver crescent on Emily's wrist. Beneath it were several words in an ancient language. Emily leaned closer. What does it say? Adrian read the inscription slowly. His face became pale. The heart mark does not choose the person who will serve the king. He looked at Emily. It chooses the person who can change him. Emily stared at the page. Change you into what? Adrian closed the book. That is what the council is afraid to discover. Outside the library, footsteps echoed through the corridor. Then a servant's voice called from behind the door. Your Majesty, the noble houses have arrived. Adrian looked at Emily. They came much sooner than I expected. Emily glanced at the ancient book. For the first time, she understood that the danger was not the mark on her wrist. It was what the mark represented. And somewhere beyond those doors, powerful people were already deciding what should happen to her future. The noble houses had arrived before Emily and Adrian even reached the main hall. Through the library doors, she could hear quiet voices filling the castle, each one carrying the weight of old titles and ancient families. Emily looked at Adrian. How many people are waiting out there? Too many. He closed the ancient book and placed one hand over its cover. You can stay here. Emily shook her head. No. If they are here because of me, I want to hear what they have to say. Adrian studied her for a moment. You do not have to prove anything. I know. Emily looked at the silver mark on her wrist. But I am tired of everyone talking about my future as if I am not standing in the room. A faint smile appeared on Adrian's face. Then we will go together. The library doors opened. The main hall was filled with vampires dressed in elegant black, silver, and deep blue. They stood beneath enormous chandeliers, speaking in low voices. When Emily entered beside Adrian, every conversation stopped. Dozens of pale faces turned toward her. She felt nervous, but she kept walking. At the center of the hall stood the silver-haired council member. Your Majesty, he said. The noble houses request an explanation. Adrian stopped beside Emily. You have one. A woman stepped forward. She was tall, composed, and dressed in a dark blue gown. Then explain why a human is standing beside the throne. Emily glanced at Adrian, but he remained silent. She answered herself. Because he invited me. The woman looked surprised. Several members of the gathering exchanged glances. Emily continued. I did not ask for the mark. I did not ask to become part of your kingdom. I did not even know vampires were real until this morning. The hall became completely quiet. So if you have questions about me, ask me directly. Adrian looked at her with unmistakable respect. The woman in blue studied Emily for several seconds. You speak boldly for someone who has no position here. Emily replied, I am not trying to have a position. I just want to understand why everyone is so afraid of me. That question changed the atmosphere. The silver-haired council member stepped forward. Because the heart mark has always appeared before great changes. Changes such as what? Emily asked. The last time it appeared, the kingdom divided into opposing factions. Emily's expression tightened. And you think I will cause the same thing? We think your presence could become the reason. Adrian's voice was quiet. Enough. The woman in blue turned toward him. Your Majesty, this is not about emotion. It is about stability. Adrian's eyes remained calm. Do not mistake compassion for weakness. Emily looked at him. He had been cold and distant when she first met him. Now he was standing between her and an entire room of powerful strangers without asking her to hide. Then the woman in blue said something that made Emily's heart sink. If you truly intend to protect her, you should know that several noble houses have already withdrawn their support from the throne. Adrian did not react. Then they have made their choice. And if more follow, she asked, what happens when the kingdom becomes divided? Emily stepped forward. Nothing has to happen. Everyone looked at her. You are all acting as if a symbol on my wrist has already decided what everyone will do. It has not. The silver-haired council member looked at her carefully. Perhaps not. But there is another problem. Emily waited. He pointed toward the ancient doors behind the throne. The old law says that if the heart mark chooses a human, the king must either publicly reject the bond or accept its consequences. Emily turned toward Adrian. What consequences? Adrian was silent. The woman in blue answered for him. If the king accepts the bond, every noble house has the right to demand a new succession vote. Emily's eyes widened. You mean they could remove him? Yes. Adrian finally spoke. And that is why I did not tell you everything. Emily looked at him, hurt more than angry. You should have. Adrian lowered his gaze. You are right. The hall fell silent again. Then Emily slowly removed the silver umbrella from her hand and placed it on the table beside her. I came here because you told me I deserved to know the truth. She looked around the hall. So tell me the rest. Before anyone could answer, a deep bell echoed through the castle. Once, twice, then a third time. Every vampire in the hall turned toward the enormous windows. Far beyond the castle walls, hundreds of lights had appeared along the mountain road. Adrian's expression became serious. The noble houses have not come only to negotiate. Emily looked outside. Then why are they here? Adrian answered quietly. To decide whether they still want me as their king. The lights along the mountain road grew brighter as Emily watched from the castle window. They were not hundreds of armies. They were carriages, elegant vehicles, and lanterns carried by representatives of the noble houses. Yet the sight was enough to make the entire castle feel different. Adrian stood beside her, silent. What happens now? Emily asked. The council will hold a succession hearing. And if they vote against you? Adrian looked at the lights below. Then I will no longer be king. Emily turned toward him. You make that sound simple. It is not. He looked at her. But a crown is not worth losing your principles. Emily remembered the first night they met. He had seemed untouchable then. Now she saw something else beneath his power. A man who had spent centuries carrying responsibility alone. The great doors opened behind them. The silver-haired council member entered. Your Majesty, the representatives are ready. Adrian nodded. Then the council member looked at Emily. You should know what they intend to argue. Tell me. They will claim that the heart mark has made the king emotionally compromised. Emily frowned. Emotionally compromised? They believe your presence has changed his judgment. Adrian remained calm. That is their opinion. The council member lowered his voice. There is more. Some of the noble houses believe the heart mark is not a blessing. They believe it is a warning. Emily looked at the silver crescent on her wrist. A warning about what? A change in the ancient order. Before Emily could ask another question, the doors opened again. The noble representatives entered the chamber and took their places around a long circular table. Adrian walked to the center. Emily remained a few steps behind him. The woman in blue stood first. Adrian Blackwood, by ancient law, the noble houses request a formal review of your rule. Adrian nodded. Granted. Emily watched the exchange carefully. There was no shouting, no threats, only quiet words carrying enormous consequences. One representative spoke about tradition. Another spoke about stability. A third questioned whether a human should be allowed inside the royal residence. Emily listened until she could no longer remain silent. May I ask something? Every face turned toward her. Adrian looked at her and nodded. Emily stepped forward. If you are worried about the future of your kingdom, why are you blaming me for something that has not happened? The room fell silent. The woman in blue answered, because history has taught us to be cautious. Emily shook her head. Caution is one thing. Deciding my future without knowing me is another. Adrian watched her quietly. The silver-haired council member lowered his eyes, almost as if he agreed. Then an older representative stood. The problem is not the girl. The problem is the king. Emily looked at Adrian. Why? The representative answered, because he has never allowed anyone close enough to influence his decisions. Now, within one night, a human stranger has earned his protection. Adrian's expression remained composed. She earned my respect long before she knew who I was. The words made Emily pause. The room became still. Then the woman in blue placed an ancient document on the table. There is one final condition. Adrian looked at it. The heartmark law. Emily stepped closer. What does it say? Adrian did not answer. The woman read aloud. If the king accepts the human marked by the heart, every noble house may withdraw its allegiance and request a new succession vote. Emily looked at Adrian. So if you choose to protect me, they can challenge your throne. Yes. And if you reject me? Adrian's eyes met hers. The mark may disappear. Emily looked down at her wrist. May. No one knows for certain. The woman in blue closed the document. That uncertainty is why the kingdom cannot remain divided. Emily took a slow breath. She finally understood the true choice before Adrian. It was not between love and duty. It was between protecting his crown and protecting the one person who had never wanted anything from him. She looked at him. If I leave, does this end? Adrian's face became very still. No, Emily stared at him. Why not? He glanced toward the ancient document. Because the council has already contacted the noble houses. They were preparing this long before you arrived. Emily felt a cold realization settle over her. Then I did not start this. Adrian looked at her. No, his voice was quiet. You only gave them the excuse they needed. Emily stared at Adrian, the meaning of his words settling over her like the silence before a storm. Then what do we do? She asked. Adrian looked toward the tall windows. Beyond them, the lights of the noble houses stretched across the mountain road, waiting for a decision that could change the kingdom. We do not give them the choice they expected. Emily frowned. What choice did they expect? They expected me to surrender the throne or surrender you. He turned toward her. I intend to do neither. The council chamber became quiet as Adrian returned to the center of the room. Emily followed, but this time she did not stand behind him. She stood beside him. The silver mark on her wrist glimmered softly. The woman in blue noticed it immediately. You have made your decision. Adrian nodded. I have. Then the succession vote will proceed. Adrian looked around the room. Before it does, I have something to say. Every representative became still. For 347 years, I have carried this crown because I believed a king was supposed to protect his kingdom from uncertainty. But I have learned something tonight. He glanced at Emily. Sometimes protecting a kingdom means refusing to let fear decide its future. Emily felt her eyes sting, but she remained silent. Adrian continued. Emily Carter did not ask for the heart mark. She did not ask to enter our world. She did not ask for my protection. Yet she has shown more courage in one day than many people in this room have shown in a century. No one interrupted him. If you believe my judgment has changed, then judge me by my actions. If you believe the throne should belong to someone else, then vote. But do not punish an innocent woman because you are afraid of what she represents. The woman in blue lowered her eyes. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then one representative stood. I will not withdraw my allegiance. Another followed. Neither will I. A third remained seated, uncertain. Emily looked around the chamber and realized something unexpected. The kingdom was not united against her. It was divided because people were afraid of change. Then the oldest council member spoke. There is one matter we have overlooked. Everyone turned toward him. He opened an ancient record and carefully read a passage. The heart mark does not command the king to choose the human. Adrian looked at him. Continue. It states that the king must choose freely. If he protects her because he fears losing his crown, the bond fails. If he protects her because he believes she deserves protection, the bond remains. Emily looked at Adrian. So it is not about the mark. Adrian shook his head. No, the ancient symbol on Emily's wrist began to glow again. This time, the light was warmer. The entire chamber watched as a second symbol appeared faintly on Adrian's hand. A quiet gasp moved through the room. The old council member whispered, "The bond has answered." Emily looked at Adrian. What does that mean? He smiled for the first time without restraint. It means the choice was never made by the mark. Then the castle bells began to ring. Not the warning bells. The bells used when the kingdom welcomed a new era. Outside, the lights along the mountain road began to move away. One by one, the noble houses were leaving. Not all had changed their minds. Not yet. But enough had chosen to remain. Emily looked toward the windows. Is it over? Adrian stood beside her. No, she turned toward him. Then what happens next? Adrian looked toward the distant mountains. The houses that wanted my throne will not simply disappear. Some will continue to challenge us. Emily took a slow breath. Us? Adrian looked at her. If you want to leave, I will open the gates. Emily remembered the tiny apartment, the $47 in her checking account, the restaurant, the rain, and the simple kindness that had brought her here. She looked at the silver mark on her wrist. Then she looked at Adrian. I think I want to stay. His expression softened. Outside, dawn began to brighten the mountains. The kingdom had not found peace yet. The future remained uncertain. But for the first time in centuries, its king was not facing that uncertainty alone. And Emily finally understood the truth hidden inside the ancient prophecy. She had never been chosen to become powerful. She had been chosen to remind a powerful man what it meant to have a heart. Even the coldest kings can change when kindness reaches the place where fear once lived.